Oh, oh my god! Hello you dirty potters, how are you today? Today we're going to talk about a second type of lid, and you guys have already seen this lid right here, which is the drop-in type. And this type of lid simply has an inner wall which catches onto the inner wall of your actual vessel, and it makes a little drop-in, so it's nice and tight. But today we're not going to talk about this type right here. Today we're going to talk about a production potter type of lid. Production potters are actually really good at finding these little tricks to make their work go faster, simply because the more pots they pump out, the more they get paid, because usually they get paid per pot. So today we're going to learn how to cheat a lid pretty much. Now keep in mind you should most likely already know how to make a drop-in lid before you do this technique, because if you don't know how to make an actual lid and you're just doing the cheat mode version of it, then you really don't know how to make a lid, now do you? And there's a couple things you're going to need for this technique first. The prime thing you need for this technique is a very sharp tool. Now I'm not talking about something like this, like a pin tool. I'm talking about something like this, a very, very sharp knife edge tool. Because at the end of this technique, we're going to end up cutting our piece off at a certain angle, and you're really, really going to need a very, very sharp tool to cut it off properly. The pin tool might do, but you'll probably have way better luck with this tool right here, or even a scalpel. The second thing you're going to need is you are going to need to know how to throw an enclosed form. The way we're going to make this cheat mode lid is by throwing an enclosed form and then cutting it later on. If you don't know how to do that, I will post a video down below. I've already done one on it. And there's two different ways you can do this technique. So we're going to throw two enclosed forms and go over both of them. And with that in mind, let's get started. First, we're going to make an enclosed form. Potter tip. You see this tiny little hole right here? This is where air can escape. And the reason I'm leaving this little hole and I'm not closing it up right away is because I want to take my metal rib and smooth out the outside of my cylinder. You see, when you close it up, you're just going to end up trapping air on the inside of this, which means you can't morph it too well anymore without it expanding even bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's a really good idea to shape it how you want it right before you close it up, because once you close it up, that entrapped air is going to make it extra difficult for you to make any more forms out of this. And be sure to leave a little tiny hole at the top so that air can escape. For the first type of cheat code lid, all we have to do is make a nice little form and then close it right up just like this. Once it's closed up, make sure you run your fingers very gently over this nub right here. Don't worry, the clay is not going to collapse or anything. Everything's trapped in there, including all the air. So you're not gonna really smush this. Potter tip. You see this little thing right here? I put a little bit too much pressure on the top, but it's okay. We can fix it. All the air is trapped in here, just like I said before. So this isn't gonna collapse or go anywhere. Actually, you can most likely just squish this together and it'll fix up really quickly. You see, look, all the air is trapped in there. So no matter how much treatment I give this, the air is just gonna move around on the inside of it. And there you go. This is the first type of the first step of the cheat mode lid. Now we have to wait for this to dry and get inside the leather till leather softs phase. But for now, we're gonna put this away. Now the second type is a little bit more difficult because you're basically going to do the same exact thing you just did, except for you're gonna leave a lot of extra clay at the top. Whenever you're making an enclosed form, it's always a good idea in general to make sure you have enough clay at the top. Don't start forming way up here. Just form down here and then start to close it in if you're going to close it in the first place. But please remember not to form the entire body and then go, oh, okay, I guess it's time to close in now. No, you should be leaving enough clay up here to close in the first place. If you don't, you're just going to ruin your form. Oh, I guess I'll just use all the clay I need to use now up here and then it'll magically appear. No, leave clay up here. Do you guys remember last time when we made the last enclosed form? We left a little bit of clay up here and we basically closed it off and made this into a completely round closed shape. Well, this one's a little bit different. This one's a little bit more advanced. For this technique, you're gonna do the same thing you did last time. The only difference is, see all this extra clay up here? You're just gonna push it right down. Just like this. And look at that, you have pretty much just made your own knob. This is your own lid. But Donte, how are we gonna get this knob? This is an enclosed form, it doesn't open. Wait until I'm done explaining the whole thing before you ask questions, Ashley. So just like the other one, we're gonna wait until tomorrow until this is in the leather to leather soft phase. And then we're gonna come back and see what we can do with this.
Tomorrow.
Okay, it's been about a day and these are nice and dry and ready to trim now. So let's start off with our non-knobbed enclosed form right here. You guys remember that little sharp tool I told you to get earlier? Well, this is where it comes into play. Go ahead and center your enclosed form. Go ahead and batten it down like a normal piece. And get that sharp tool that we were talking about. If there's anything extra you want to do with this, like trim this part of it or anything like that, go ahead and do it now before we get to this next step, because it's going to be extremely hard to do so once we cut the top off this thing. Come here, get a little closer. A little bit closer, come on, a little bit closer. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take the sharpest edge of your knife right here and poke it straight into this while letting your wheel spin very slowly. Don't go too fast, don't try and force it, and definitely don't poke straight in. What you want to do is you want to get a nice angle just like this. If you do it straight in, it's not going to fit. Here, let me show you. Boom, and we've got ourselves a brand new lidded piece, just like that. Now, you can put this on and take it off whenever you want, but make sure not to mess up the little rounded part right here, because the more you mess it up, the less it'll fit. You can probably see that I've cut this at an angle, and that's why I angled my tool so sharply in this way. If you made a straight incision, you would pretty much just have a top. It would just go on and off. But this way, it fits nice and neat, just like this. There's a little insertion right there, and this is the reason why you're cutting it at an angle like this. But Donte, how am I supposed to pick it up? There's no handle to there's no lid. Give it a second, just wait, would you? Calm your face. This is the easiest part, because once you've already made your insertion and made your lidded piece, all you have to do is sculpt a little tiny piece of whatever you want to sculpt. Score it here, a little score right here, a little score right here, and just attach it straight like this. And once this dries up, this will be your first cheat mode lid. You little cheater. This one's a little bit easier because you're pretty much going to do the same exact thing you just did. The only difference is you don't have to sculpt yourself a little lid on the top. This is already right here. And we're just going to pick whatever spot feels the best right here, and we're going to make sure we have our blade nice and angled just like this. And just leave it right there. We're going to let it run for a very long time. See, and there we go. Comes right off, and you've already thrown that knob right there, so this is officially a jar. You don't have to sculpt anything and put it on top. Potter tip. Make sure you get a sponge or some piece of cloth to smooth out the inside of this right here. If you don't smooth out these little jagged edges right here, you're gonna have one hell of a time digging your hand in this jar, and you might even cut yourself. Always make sure you smooth out your edges. If you're having a hard time getting those edges out, you can simply take your trim tool and make sure you follow that sharp curve right there and give it a tiny little trim. Make sure you don't give it too much of a trim though. You'll end up messing the fit for the jar. And we're gonna give a little touch up to the lid right. You know what? I don't have time for this little sponge. Yeah, that's right. Now I'm wiping it off. There we go. You have just made your first production Potter jar. Well, there we go. I really hope this helped some of you guys make jars if you didn't already know how to make them this way, or if it helped you pass your class and you're really squeezing in tight for those hours. My teacher made sure that I knew how to make the drop-in lid before I learned how to make this at all, because this is kind of a cheat way to do it. And while this is an easier way to make a jar, you do have to know how to throw an enclosed form in the first place, so you should be well past the point of making jars. But if you're not, I highly suggest you learn how to make a gallery lid and a drop-in lid before making a production Potter lid like this one. Because if you're just making lids like this your whole life and you're not making them properly, like what are you even? What are you doing with your life? And there's two types of lids I like to do with this technique. Number one, I could very easily make a knob as I make the enclosed form, which takes a little bit more practice, but it's very easy to do once you understand how much clay you need at the top. And number two, I can just make an enclosed form and sculpt a little handle later on. It's actually very, very easy to put whatever shape you want on top of this, score it, slip it, and just call it a day. Thank you guys very much for joining me. I really hope this helped you out, and I will see you Dirty Potters next week. I like this one right here. But we're not keeping this one. This one's straight garbage. I don't like it. I don't need it.